Mr. Speaker, this nonsense about the fact that you are trying to disparage what the minister in the Ministry of Finance has told you. By doing this, we don't have to go and look for 120 million US dollars to do any of those 4 projects. So that 240 million Barbados dollars that we are getting back in doing this transaction will now allow us to be able, yes, to spend money on the police for law and order. Yes, to spend money on roads to be able to deal with the fact that for a decade roads were not done properly. And then when you compound that with the convection rain and the other things we are getting clearly from the climate crisis, that we have a monumental task on our hands with respect to the paving of roads and the rebuilding of bridges in this country that across decades have not been touched. And the Deputy Prime Minister can tell you why all of those things remain to be done when they were not touched or maintained at all, even when they reach dangerous levels, especially in the last decade. Mr. Speaker, we can now go and spend more money on healthcare and education because $240 million is not 24 cents. It is not $24. It's not even 24 million. And to be able to find savings of $240 million to get assets worth $240 million by simply having a different approach to how you structure your debt. What amazes me, sir, is that the Democratic Labour Party has no moral authority to speak on the South Coast sewage treatment plant, no moral authority to speak on debt, no moral authority to speak on half the things that he is trying to purport that he can speak to in here today. But, Mr. Speaker, I am not going to be distracted by that because I want the public of Barbados to judge for themselves. And you know, I have in my past said, let God and time be my judge. And I am prepared to let God and time be our judge. We're not rushing anywhere. There's no election next week, so don't worry. If there was, poor fellas, you'll be in trouble. But I don't even believe in taking advantage of you because we're going to stay focused on the people's business. We put, as he, the member knows, an temporary outfall. Member for Christchurch East was the minister. A 12-inch line and an 8-inch line. The government took the decision to put in a redundant outfall in the event that something happened because we were concerned that in the same climate crisis, that the waters and the turbulence in the waters from storms could cause us problems. And Mr. Speaker, 4 years after we put it down, 5 years after we put it down, it did cause a problem. And one of the pipelines had a break. Luckily, it was not bad, and we were able to fix it. But at the same time, we were able to use the alternate pipeline that we put down as a matter of management, precautionary management, the same type of management that would allow us to get involved in this debate here. You understand? And I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, that it is this absence of prudence, this absence of care that continues to distinguish the Democratic Labour Party in its new incarnation. And it is of concern to me because I think that it is a great party that ought to be given its best chance. But quite frankly, under this leadership, it is being driven to its worst possible days. I now understand why the former Prime Minister was so enthusiastic that the member for Christchurch South should leave the Democratic Labour Party, so that he now wipes out of the record of Guinness books the worst defeats and the worst leadership of that institution in George Street. Because not even the former Prime Minister presided over the carnage and the lockout and the police that this new neophyte leader of the Democratic Labour Party has brought upon it. Mr. Speaker, it is sad. And I say to you that in life, you can choose to be a workhorse or you can choose to be a dress horse and a show horse. The truth is that the member for Christchurch South has perfected the art of acting, and perfected the art of dressage, and perfected the art of showing. When in truth and in fact, what is needed here is a simple appreciation that in these difficult times, he knows it. He charges bills in excess of 6 figures to his colleagues. And that if you have to find ways of saving money in difficult times, you do so. The government of Barbados is not in debt distress. Our debt to GDP is down to 105% from 177%. And in other words, put it in context. And the average person will understand that if the amount of debt that they got to pay coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down, and if they can go and get a new house, and they can get a new car, and they can get an irrigation system without having to add a cent to the debt that they owe the bank already, you don't tell me that the Bajans ain't going to do it? That's all a debt for climate swap is. Making sure that you are doing it for the right purposes. And because of our advocacy on climate, it has meant that we were able not only to get the savings, $140 million in interest savings, Barbados currency, but 80 million Barbados dollars in a grant, G-R-A-N-T. But Mr. Speaker, to oppose for the sake of opposing, that is what has been reduced to. And the member can speak on, from larboard to starboard, on everything except what is in the resolution. And if he had just picked up the resolution and read it, even paragraph 1 states the limit of the Special Loans Act in Barbados currency. But paragraph 3, paragraph 4, paragraph 5, paragraph 6, 6 paragraphs on a 2-page document. Mr. Speaker, even a primary school child can read this. So it tells me, because I know the member can read, and I know he has better English language skills than me. So it tells me that something else is amiss here. And that is what concerns me. And the bottom line is, sir, that while we are trying to be able to bring relief and create economic opportunities for people from the farmers right back through, this is being poo-pooed purely because it comes from this government. And as to the fact that it was in the newspaper, Mr. Speaker, how many times have you heard the British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, speak about the budget that his Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, delivered before she delivered it? How many times? How many times did you hear other cabinet ministers in the British government? But I don't even need to leave this jurisdiction. How many times on the day before estimates are laid in this House or debated in this House that you would have political speeches on a Sunday, far less a statement and an interview to the press? How many times? But as a member just pointed out to me, the problem that we are facing here is that the member for Christchurch South only started to pay attention to Parliament when he crossed the floor. He didn't come to Parliament. He didn't know the Parliament. He still don't know the parliamentary rules. And when he purports to know them and quote them about repetition, that was after he repeated everything in his speech 4 times each. No, Mr. Speaker. This honourable chamber deserves better from someone as learned and as senior in age to public life. He didn't come to public life yesterday. He came to public life since 1989. And for him not to be familiar with how this parliament functions week after week after week is an indictment on him, not on the rest of us. But, Mr. Speaker, you ask yourself why and how. Sir, this is a serious issue. Week by week now we live in a season of superlatives. The hottest, the wettest, the driest. This morning I saw the Prime Minister of Grenada touring areas in Grenada that flooded again. There was no named hurricane. There was no named storm. But the damage was done. We know it here every day now. Rain, 3-4 hours, 2 hours, intense rain. Every time I actually feel between St. George right down to Dalkeith, I almost feel like that corridor mark off, because every time you're going across the highway, you see this black cloud, 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the day, and bam, comes the rain. And we've spoken about this. And the truth is that if we are going to become resilient in the next decade, we're going to have to spend almost minimum of 11.6 billion US dollars in investment between the public and the private sector. And therefore, it is not a case about being highly indebted. It is a case of being prudent. If you can get a house and a car and an irrigation system on condition that you conserve water, on condition that you use green energy in your house, and you don't have to pay the bank a cent more. Mr. Speaker, you want to take it? Not a cent more. But when it goes now to the level of value, $240 million, and then they throw away comment, oh, this government's biggest capital project is sewage. Yes, it is, because the last government did not maintain the plant. And then there comes a point beyond which a plant can be properly maintained. And once we realize that in spending money to maintain the plant, we could as well upgrade it and make it a tertiary treatment plant and benefit from the water that would otherwise go in the sea. No, Mr. Speaker. No. This is unfortunate. And Mr. Speaker, it is a sign of desperation. It is a sign of desperation of the Democratic Labour Party. It is a sign, Mr. Speaker, of trying to distort and to distract at the very time when the world is facing all kinds of problems that require discipline, require strategic focus, and as it relates to caring for people. Let us get real. The days of being able to create straw men and to fool people and deceive people, mercifully, a lot of our public are educated, and therefore they can discern and understand for themselves. Tell me, and I don't make, in fact, I'm going to ask him and put him to the point. A government that is in bed with the Barbados Light and Power, who got the Light and Power waiting for a license for 6 years, as we follow the law and the processes. A government that is in bed with the Light and Power, who got the Light and Power waiting for a decision on a rate increase that it has not had in over a decade. It doesn't even make sense. The gentleman is just stringing words together for the sake of stringing words. And I therefore end as I started, sir, because I say I wasn't planning to get involved in this debate. But when a member of Parliament, no less a leader of the opposition, who has before him the resolution, and the resolution is stated in Barbados dollars, and then you're going to ask if the government is deviating from its practice of wanting to borrow more local currency? Mr. Speaker, no. We expect even better from him of that. And when you add to that all of the other allegations and all of the other, you mustn't come in Parliament if you talk already about this in the public. Well, guess what? He interested in form in Parliament, and we interested in explaining to people so that people can understand what we're doing for them. That's the difference. And if I have to do it over and over to be able to explain to the people of Barbados, I am not a show horse. Not one. Our duty is to break it down and to make it understandable. And if at the end of the day, we can get all of these projects, everybody, the president of the European Investment Bank was insistent. This is the first time they have ever done a counter guarantee in a debt for climate swap. The president of the Inter-American Development Bank knew that the fact that we are taking all of the money, we're not taking conservation savings year by year, as we have done in the debt for nature swap. That will give us anywhere between 50 to 60 million US, 100 to 120 million Barbados, over a 15-year period. Not this. The tenders have gone out already for who will build this plant. Remember, for Christchurch South can speak, for Christchurch West can speak to that. And that is why I am prepared to say, let God and time be my ally. And I do so with a calm assurance as to what the outcome shall be. Because, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt where the money is coming from. This money, 600 million, is being used to pay down debt that we have. And that debt ranges from 4.5% to 8% for the Series D and E bonds. And for the Series B, 3.75%. We are going to bring this debt in. Same sheet, 3.25%. The member for Christchurch East Central spoke to the fact that there are targets. There are targets for the last debt for nature too. And what are the consequences of the targets? It's not like the Credit Suisse loan that the Democratic Labour Party brought in here in December 2013, where the penalties went up by hundreds of basis points. Member for St. Michael South Central can speak to that. This debt, if you miss a target for a quarter, will go up by 10 basis points. You know what 10 basis points is, sir? 0.1%. In other words, it's not 0.2%. Those are the two amounts, depending on when it comes, that there would be the penalty. 10 or 20 basis points, 100 basis points is 1 percentage point. But then again, you need to be familiar with these things to know what we're talking about. And the reason why it's called a sustainability-linked bond is that basically, so long as you do what you're supposed to do, you're good. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you'll get a rap on your knuckles, and you try and bring it back in within 3 months, rather than it being a permanent rise. Every time Barbados' debt was downgraded, we had to increase our interest payments by 500 basis points. Sorry, 50 basis points and 100 basis points, not 500, 50 and 100. But that is what we are being subjected to in here. And if the honourable member would just simply read and ask a question, and he would now understand that debt for nature swaps and debt for climate swaps come in different forms. This is groundbreaking. But apart from anything else, forget the groundbreaking part. Bajans will get $240 million in value without it having to come out of the taxpayers' pockets. Break it down. It ain't coming out of no taxpayer pocket, not a dollar, not a cent, not a yen. It is coming out purely of taking our existing debt, and instead of paying 8% and 4.5% and 3.75%, we pay only 3.25%. And we get a treatment plant. We get a pipeline. We get a 7-megawatt solar system with battery storage. And Mr. Speaker, we will get anywhere between $9 and $12 million every year for 5 years for the Barbados Water Authority. That will not come out of a bill or a taxpayer's pocket. Mr. Speaker, when those things happen, it becomes easier for me to finance the people in the Bell and the Bellevue and Licorice Village and Bailey's Alley, because we're not looking for new money for the sewage treatment plant. If we had to look for new money for that, we wouldn't have the money to spend in Bailey's Alley or in the Bell to give people in the Bell and Licorice Village for the very first time in the history of this country, pipe water. No, Mr. Speaker. No. And this is what this House has just been reduced to. No, Mr. Speaker. I don't normally deal with the member for Christchurch South. He's correct. Because I feel, sir, he wants to know what happened with the member for Christchurch East Central, why he's so partisan. I know the member for Christchurch East Central well. And the one thing I know about the member for Christchurch East Central is that he detests betrayal. And worse than betrayal, he detests ungratitude, ungratefulness. You know what the old-time Bajans is tell you? Ungratefulness is what? Worse than witchcraft. You hear me that say so? And when the member for Christchurch East Central acts and speaks in the way that he does, it is because he has witnessed firsthand what it is to have betrayal. He has witnessed firsthand what it is for a member to leave constituents who canvass in rain and sun, sometimes with him when the other member was not even present. And not a word of thank you, not a word of any kind of appreciation. No. Mr. Speaker, you can't have morals when it suits you and ignore them when it suits you. That's not how we teach our children. And as for this nonsense that this government feels is perfect, how many times in here, Mr. Speaker, have I said that this government is not perfect, that this government is not omniscient, and that we are not omnipotent, to the point where I have said it over and over, because I recognize that we are not sitting an exam at Harrison College. That's for people who are obsessed with Harrison College. Not for me. I'm in the business of trying to make sure that people can live better and easier. And as for the question, are you better off today than you were under the Democratic Labour Party? Ask it, ask it, ask it. Because I know that the businesses that couldn't open on the South Coast, because nobody wanted to come and eat in the businesses with sewage in the car park or running right out front of the business, ask them whether they're better off. I know that the people who are now getting reverse tax credit, earning $2,100 a month, or it's $2,090 a month, $25,000 a year, never got it under the last government. I know that the people who are not paying taxes, earning between that same $25,000 and $35,000, ask them if they're better off. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to get the same member for Christchurch East Central to come in here and remind him of all of the tax cuts that put more money in people's pockets. And you know what is the clearest evidence of it, sir? But if he can't read a resolution in words, I don't think he will be able to read a table with numbers. The savings in this country has gone from just over $8 billion in 2018 to just under $14 billion today, Mr. Speaker. How do you think it get there? If the disposable income was not being given back to the people, that is the proof that they put in. And Mr. Speaker, it is sad. Is he asking the people who didn't have a single bus? Ask the member for St. Michael Southeast. How many buses get by? And then another 30 coming in January. He wanted to know about the garbage collection. We too are concerned about it. That is why the government just found $15 million to buy new garbage trucks in this country. And this is not the first time we are buying garbage trucks. We had to buy garbage trucks when we became the government because the last government did not have. They didn't buy buses. They didn't buy garbage trucks. Mr. Speaker, the equipment that the hospital is now concluding the legal work for, $130 million in equipment for the hospital. Are we better off? He heard somebody else say that and win an election and feel that he can do the same thing and win an election. That's why I tell you that this is all now, it's a little too transparent and a little too much for us to take. Because as somebody would say, all that know what happened under them ain't dead. All that know how they had, I didn't even get to the big ticket one. Ask the people who just graduate from the University of the West Indies. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. 7 straight years of graduations where people can graduate freely without having to look for a cent to pay in tuition fees. Are we better off? Mr. Speaker, I am prepared to let the people of Barbados answer that. But I say to him, remember what they say, ungratefulness worse than witchcraft. Because he didn't get in here in this House of Assembly telling people that they were worse off. He got in this House of Assembly in Christchurch South by telling people that they were better off. His biggest problem is to determine whether he will, Mr. Speaker, be able to look in a mirror and recognize who he sees. Because when he looks in that mirror and plays the speeches from before, he will have to ask, is that the same person? Other than a little gray, is it the same person? He will have to ask himself that question. Because I know what I heard him say. And I know what is recorded for posterity. And I know what he now comes in here to try to stay, to keep half a party together. Because the other half gone along. And the other half gone along with good reason, because they don't understand how an authentic solution to the leadership of the Democratic Labour Party can be a person who crosses the floor from the Barbados Labour Party and who has left them already. Left us twice, left them once. So his track record is leaving without notice. Not just in politics, we've heard that in law too. Caused a whole trial in Turks and Caicos representing a whole premier. 3-4 months delay. Because the judge said he did not even have the decency to tell the client. He has never seen anything so. But if the judge had even talked to us, we would have told him that he did it in 1989, he did it in 1999, he did it in 2000, he did it in 2008, and he do it again in 2024. In law, that is known as similar fact behavior, admissible even if there was a breach of hearsay. Very clear. So, Mr. Speaker, I didn't intend to speak, but I had to because, quite frankly, I believe fundamentally that if we can have more debt for climate swaps, I serve notice that the government is going after a debt for social swap. I co-chair the Sustainable Development Goals, which is fundamentally about development and bringing development to people. And if we can reduce our interest rate by buying back more debt and use the savings to increase Barbados' social capital, to do for the disabled community what I said 2 weeks ago when I spoke in here, when he said he didn't see me for how long. But he just happened to speak in the resolution for the disabled community. When we can buy and do more stuff in healthcare, when we can buy and do more stuff in education, or community development, or crime prevention. That is what a debt for social swap will give us. But, Mr. Speaker, when you criticize the advisors, and I want to thank our advisors, I want to thank the Ministry of Finance, I want to thank the Barbados Water Authority, I want to thank all who have worked literally like this, in lockstep, to bring us to this position today. It has not been easy, but it has been worth it, because what we get in exchange, Mr. Speaker, do you know that $240 million I don't want that tonight. $240 million, Mr. Speaker, is the equivalent, and I can put it in context with our revenue. Because clearly, people feel that we're talking about 10 cents and 20 cents in here. And it is important that Bajans have a sense, Mr. Speaker, of what, in relative terms, these 4 projects mean. Because when we see the building go up, we don't necessarily appreciate that the building went up and money was paid. Mr. Speaker, do you know that for the entire year, we don't expect to get more than $490 million in income taxes. So that getting $240 million is the equivalent of half of the income taxes that the government of Barbados took last year or will take this year. And that's just to give you scale. The debt for nature swap that we did in 2022 will only garner us half of that, but over 15 years. And with the time, the price of money obviously changes because of inflation. In this instance, we draw $240 million immediately up front within the majority now, and the rest to the Water Authority within a 5-year period. Mr. Speaker, the facts speak for themselves. If Latin was allowed in this Parliament, because that seems to be the only language that leaders of the Democratic Labour Party understand, res ipsa loquitur. I am obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 3:15 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chairman be suspended until 3:15 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chairman stands suspended until 3:15 p.m.
11122, 11122. Levels check. Yeah, good to go.